Hey guys, in today's video we will be taking a look at responsive design with Tailwind CSS. So as you can see on my screen, we have a very simple banner, a blue banner, and inside we have the text that shows the current width of the screen. So as you can see, if I make it smaller, the screen width changes, right? And you can see that in the text. And then we have a picture of the breakpoints in Tailwind's responsive design. These are the default breakpoints. And it's what I'll kind of go over today. I got this picture from the Tailwind documentation, so if you guys haven't looked at that, I would highly recommend you do. So let's look at this from a code perspective. So I have the banner here, and of course the text, and then I just have the picture here. So let's just jump right into it, right? So responsive design in regular CSS, we use breakpoints, right? With breakpoints, when you go below a certain value, a certain pixel value, we can execute some certain CSS that will change the way our content looks on the screen. And it's the same with Tailwind, it's just a little bit different, right? So right now, as you can see, my banner is blue, right? I've given it a background color of blue 200. I'll just say blue just for simplicity's sake, right? I've given it a background of blue. So now let's say, as I make it smaller, after a certain point, I want it to become red. How would I do that? Well, we can use some of these breakpoints, or we could use a custom width, which I'll talk about later. But let's just go with LG. So the breakpoint for LG, that's the prefix, it's the minimum width of 1024 pixels. So with LG, we're able to execute some sort of command when we drop below 1024 pixels. So here's how you would do it. Right now, I have a background of blue, right? And so if I want something to happen when I drop below 1024 pixels, here's what I'll do. First, I will have to say LG colon, okay? So what this is saying when we're above 1024 pixels, when we're above that LG breakpoint, our banner is going to be blue. So you can see when I make this smaller, when we drop below 1024, the blue banner goes away, right? And the reason why it doesn't change color is because I didn't set it a color to give once it goes below that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll say red, right? Nice color. So now what this code says is, if you're above 1024 pixels or this LG breakpoint, you're going to be blue, but when we drop below that, you're going to be red. So let's take a look at this in action, right? I'm making it smaller, and as you can see, it's shifting from blue to red, okay? So you can kind of see it up here. If I have 1025, it's going to be blue. Even 1024, it'll be blue. But if I drop below that, we're going to be red, right? And the cool thing is we can stack this on multiple times. So let's say if I squish it even more, I want it to be yellow, right? How would I do that? Well, we'll have to choose a smaller breakpoint. Let's go with SM. So that's 640 pixels. So if I do SM, well, now what it's saying is when we're above LG, our banner will be blue. When we're between SM and LG, or 640 pixels and 1024, it'll be red. But when we're below that, we'll have to give it some other colors. Let's go with yellow. All right. So let's take a look. When we're above 1024, we're blue. When we drop below, we go to red. And when we drop below 640 pixels, which is the smallest breakpoint by default in Tailwind, it'll be yellow, right? So 640 right there on the dot. If I drop below, we're going to be yellow, right? So really that's all there is to Tailwind responsiveness. We'll do a few more examples. So let's I know color isn't the best way to do it, so let's do something else. Let's play around with width. So you can see this image right here, right? So this image has a width of 1/2, meaning that it's by default going to be 1/2 of my entire screen, which looks fine on a big screen, but when I scroll this down, you can see that it kind of gets hard to see. So let's change that. Let's say LG, when you drop below LG, you're going to have a width of 2/3, right? And then when you drop below MD, which is the next breakpoint under MD, you'll have a width of, let's just say 4/5. And then when you drop below the smallest breakpoint, SM, you'll have a full width. You'll be the whole screen. So let's take a look at how that looks, right? So if I make this smaller, right now we're above 1024 pixels, so it'll be 1/2 of the screen. If I drop below, now you can see we're 2/3 of the screen, right? That's what my MD breakpoint is saying. When we're between 768 pixels and 1024, we'll have a width of 2/3. So what if we drop below 768? So if we drop below 768, now we have a width of 4/5 of the entire screen. And then what if we drop below the smallest breakpoint, which is 640? So I'll say 640. If we drop below that, now we have a width of the whole screen, right? So yeah, there you go. That's all there is to this. I have a few more examples we'll do. So I'm gonna comment that out, uncomment this. And by the way, all this code is it's in a GitHub repository in the description. So if you guys want to kind of play around with it, feel free to. So here I just made a neat little banner that kind of shows you guys the breakpoints in a more visual format. So you can see as I go through each breakpoint, I have a color that changes, right? So there you go. When we drop below XL, we're gonna go to, so right now it's an extra large. When we drop below that, it's gonna be large, right? If it's between 1000, if it's below 1024 and 768, still be large. And then if I keep making it smaller, so we have medium, and then we have small, and there you go. So now we'll do a quick example with this testimonial section right here. So we'll see how it plays out in like a real kind of code scenario. So down here I have a mock testimonial section, and as you can see, when I make this smaller, it just kind of it implodes, right? Obviously it doesn't look good. So code-wise, this is really simple. We just have each div here is a testimonial, and we have columns 3, right? So that's saying we have 3 columns. This is actually an inbuilt Tailwind class, so it's pretty neat. But yeah, so let's see what we can do to responsify this, right? Because right now, if I make it smaller, it doesn't really work out. So what I can do is I can say LG columns 3. So above 1024 pixels, we'll have 3 columns because it'll still look good. But when we drop below that, I want 2 columns, right? So let's see. We drop below 1024. Now we're at 2 columns, right? You can see the pixel size up here. I know it's a little bit difficult, but yeah. So 1024. If we go below that, 3 columns. Go below that, we have 2 columns, right? But this is it still gets pretty squished after some time. So let's add just another layer of responsivity onto it. So we'll say SM, which is the smallest breakpoint. We'll just have 1 column once it gets to that level. And there you go. So currently I have, my computer wants to work. Currently I have 3 columns. We drop below that first breakpoint, LG, we have 2. If we drop below that smallest breakpoint at 640 pixels, we have 1 column. And yeah, there you go. So that's how you can quickly responsify grid layouts like this. I'm going to do a video on responsive design with Flexbox and grid later on. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, you can always subscribe. Yeah. So now let's talk about how to add your own custom breakpoints, right? Because what if you don't want 640 pixels? What if you want something to change when you're at 300 pixels? Well, thankfully, the Tailwind documentation is a great resource, by the way. You guys should look at it. But they have a section at the very bottom here called arbitrary values. So if you need to use like a custom breakpoint, a one-off breakpoint as they say, you can just do it like this. So you can do minimum, 300 whatever pixels, and then you can put your command, right? So let's try that here. Let's just say, let's get rid of all of this. So we'll just go back to columns 3. Okay, cool. And let's say that when we're above 300 pixels, or let's just say 500. When we're above 500 pixels, I want 3 columns, but if we drop below that, I only want 2 columns. Oops. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Actually, 500 might be a bit small. Let's go 800. See how that works. So if I scroll down, you can see that after we drop below 800, I go from 3 to 2, right? So if you don't like the Tailwind breakpoints, which are up here, you can use kind of your own ones, right? But if you find yourself using this a lot, what you can do is you can go into your Tailwind configuration and you can just set you can set a system of custom breakpoints, and this is really helpful because I like the Tailwind ones, but I normally add more, so it goes up to 640. I normally make one for like really small mobile devices at like 500 or 450 pixels, so that's really helpful. And to do that, you can just follow what they have here in the tailwind.config.js. You can you can put anything you want, right? You can set it up however you want. And another quick thing is the Tailwind breakpoints by default, they use minimum. So they use min 300 pixels, which means that you're responsifying it around if something is greater than this, do this. If something's less than, do that. But if you would like to use maximum instead, you can just use like arbitrary values. Or if you click this button here, at the very bottom, um, trying to find it. Yeah, if you want to use max width or something like that instead, you can just set a key here in your tailwind.config and that will fix it. So that's all I had for responsive design. It's really simple. If you guys just play around with it, you'll get the hang of it. And yeah, I will see everyone in the next video.